Morning, Al.
Morning, Bruce.
Morning, Bruce.
I don't know who is in this, but it says we are recording already. Jeannie or
Yeah.
Peggy, if you're listening.
I see.
Everybody here and we're good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. All right. I forgot I got to get my camera replaced. It's been wacky on me lately. So, little 4th of July action. Yeah. Is it all flashy for you guys?
Little pixelated, but you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting special session for Monday, July 7th. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. That's settled. Real quickly for Selectwomen's updates, I just want to, first of all, thank all the different organizations that pull off this incredible 4th of July. I was talking to people, we're the only town that does 3 major events for one holiday. And it takes a lot of effort on the part of the volunteer organizations that run these, as well as the public safety staff and town staff. In the middle of all that, we got this incredibly severe thunderstorm that created a lot of chaos the night before the parade. And our volunteer fire department stepped up huge. Along with our police department and public works staff. So they were able to get things at a level where we could continue to have the parade, because it's not just about clearing the parade route, but it's also trying to make sure that all those collector roads and everything in town, which all seem to be hit with that storm. So we had blocked roads on Green Hill Road, Warpus Road, Mungertown Road, all the major roads that lead to other parts of Madison. So it was really challenging. And working with Eversource, they were able to get everything up and running. And I know some people were out of power for quite a bit. We had, I think the peak was around 2,200 outages, which is quite significant for our town. We were one of the probably largest outages in the Eversource territory. So for some reason, Madison got hit particularly hard with this severe weather event. I think one of the things that was notable to me was I literally got nothing from any other weather source except the town subscribes daily to this WeatherWorks program that sends us updates in the morning, and it talks about very localized weather forecasts for like paving and for plowing and things like that. Nothing from National Weather Service, nothing from the state, no, Channel 6 or not Channel 6, but Channel 8 or anything. So this was kind of came up as a big surprise. They were just originally predicting this was going to be thunderstorms, typical stuff. So so we just have to be more on alert all the time, and for these types of things during the summer. And I also just want to call out that this weekend also brings a tremendous amount of just other emergencies, water rescues. I think I saw at least 4 or 5 at a minimum in dispatch where our fireboat has gone out to do rescues for people stranded on paddle boards, swimmers. We had a kind of a strange event that happened also with individual. So it is a very busy weekend for them. And I just want to thank them for all their service. And appreciate that they do all this so that we can enjoy really a spectacular 4th of July holiday season. So those are my comments this morning. Just glad that everything was fantastic. I thought the parade, the fireworks, and the concert on the green was wonderful as well. So with that, I'll open up to Selectmen comments and liaison reports.
Only curious if anybody's put together any sort of attendance estimates for the parade or the fireworks. I know during the parade, we were all commenting that it was probably the largest spectator crowd we'd seen in recent memory, Al. I think you agree with that? You're on mute.
It's so hard to tell. It's certainly as large as any I've experienced.
I would echo that. It seemed very big. Everything seemed really, although I would say the fireworks was probably the least in terms of, I mean, in terms of comparing to history, because being on a Wednesday night, I think it was still packed and still very busy. But I feel like there wasn't as much of the craziness, you know, because people used to come in much earlier during the day and plan out their whole day around the fireworks. So it wasn't as crazy as that this year because it was a Wednesday night.
There's definitely a little bit of buzz on social media about that too, relative to why was it on 7/2? I mean, obviously it's a private organization that does this and schedules it, but some people had to work the next day too, so that could have impacted the numbers.
Yeah, and because we have three events, we have to coordinate the three events. They cannot all be on the same day or really double up unless it's absolutely necessary. And so we work with the organizations to find dates that work for them as well as the town and the public services. So sometimes it lands on a Wednesday. That could have been a scheduling problem for that group. So if there's no other selectmen comments, I know this is a special meeting. I guess David's joined us. So we ready to move on to item number 5? Yep. Okay, good. We'll do that. All right. And I'm sorry, this is I gotta get a new camera. I forgot this started happening to me last week. I'd like to welcome our chair of our ad hoc facilities committee, David Kadamus. You saw in your packet, and I'll go ahead and share this, but there's been some further conversation since the interim report that the committee provided. And so David's going to just talk through some of the committee hasn't officially like voted or made a recommendation just because of scheduling issues, but I know there's been some discussions amongst committee members about moving forward with some things that our board has kind of highlighted as priorities in terms of what to do with certain buildings, because we have both Jeffrey and Ryerson are now officially closed as elementary schools. The move is now underway, and they will be turned over to the town probably January 1st. And so we need to kind of ramp up our efforts to start looking at those buildings and seeing, how do we, either repurpose them or, demolish them or sell the property or all that whole exercise. So with that, I will turn this over to David to kind of walk through the thinking of the committee on our next steps. And we want to get board feedback from this, and then our plan would take that feedback and that would feed into the request for proposal kind of consultant steps that we want to take. So Jeannie, you can slide. Okay.
Thank you, Peggy. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. I echo the comments of all of you about how great the 4th of July weekend was. And as you know, that storm was quite intense. I mean, we lost at our Christmas tree farm about 40 trees, got pulled out of the ground and ripped off at the tops. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, it looked like a hurricane. So, but anyway, getting back to our committee, we've been meeting quite often, and our last meeting was on Juneteenth, which unfortunately, so we ended up not having a meeting on that was our scheduled meeting. But we've been, after the vote for the budget and on Academy, we've kind of pivoted to start rethinking how we're going to support the whole facility planning effort across the town and across all the facilities. And as a result, we wanted to make sure that we have a plan in place and basic research done for the, getting it prepared for the fall is really our goal, so that in the fall and winter, we can have some real discussions about how facilities would be used and how things would be reprogrammed if appropriate. To that end, we've identified 3 major initiatives to go forward, and we're having a special meeting on Wednesday to approve all these 3, but there's consensus, I think, in general from all the committee members that yes, this is a direction we need to go in. But we wanted to share it just because of timing here with you all today. The 3 initiatives are, the first one and the smallest one is Memorial Town Hall. Jeffrey and Ryerson is a second initiative, and then what we call the vacant or underutilized land parcels is a third. As you recall, in our interim report, we identified about 250 to 300 acres of land that was either totally vacant or underutilized or potential targets for something that might be alternative use. So that's the subject of that last of that RFP. The Memorial Town Hall we've pivoted to because of the Academy vote, and one of the thoughts are that we should have a feasibility study on whether the Memorial Town Hall can be returned to its original design as a theater or congregating space. When you look at the old pictures, there's probably 200 to 250 seats that were in the original design. And so the core question is, can we bring in some professionals to tell us, is it feasible to bring the building back to its original design, and actually how many seats would be in there, and what type of renovations would need to be happening because of current regulations of ADA and all those kinds of things. And also given the renovations that have happened both interior and exterior to the building over time. Jeffrey and Ryerson is the third piece that we're looking at. And the core question is, how can some, in particular in Jeffrey, because of the amount of square footage there, which is almost this equivalent to what's at the town campus. Actually, I think it's a little bit more square footage than it's at the town campus. Can we use that for some of the areas that we're thinking of, like Madison Youth and Family Services has a major need, Board of Ed potentially, other community functions, storage, a lot of the things that might have come out of the Academy space if it was in fact approved. And so those functions are still in need, and the core question is whether we can do that. So those are the three big studies. What we're looking at is, for Memorial Town Hall, we're probably thinking it's a $10,000 to $15,000 range for budgeting purposes. For Jeffrey and Ryerson, it's 50 to 60,000. And in Ryerson, part of the question is, should all or part of it be demoed, and part of it be repurposed for other functions? And then finally, the vacant underutilized land parcels is an important piece, and that's probably the most expensive one. We're targeting that around $75,000. But that's dealing with a lot of acres and about 20 to 25 locations. And the key part of that is really to understand the potential tax impact. So we have costs that would be associated with Jefferson, Ryerson, and Memorial Town Hall, but we also have, on the other hand, potential revenue opportunities that would be generated by these land things. So we're trying to keep this as cost neutral as possible. So we therefore want to understand what's the potential financial benefits to the town by repurposing those assets of the underutilized land in order to fund some of those other things. So that's where we're at. We're looking, like I said, we're talking the meeting on that on the 9th with the committee to go through the RFPs, and we're getting help from Anderson's group and staff in the town to help write these. We've kind of outlined what the RFP might be, but we're getting help from the staff to actually draft the RFP in appropriate language that we need to do. And if you all are concurring that this makes sense, then we want to take this to the Board of Finance on the 16th, I believe.
Thanks, David. And I think these are kind of ballpark estimates. We'll get more feedback once we actually, finalize these RFPs and get them out there. But we thought, let's get some funds earmarked at least for it. That by getting the planning reserve monies reserved, it's kind of showing all boards are supporting the initiative. The thought is, to get this, if we get the Board of Finance to vote on this at our next meeting, we could actually get these initiated by the end of July, I think, with the idea of hiring somebody like, September 1st at the latest. So,
Oh, and one other thing, Peggy, if I can just add, just so that the other board members know, our committee is also active with the Surf Club planning effort as well as the Academy planning effort. So, you know, although we're not really voting members, if you would, we're connected in those other discussions so that whatever we do, everything is coordinated between all the major initiatives in the town at the moment.
So questions, I guess, from board members about thoughts about moving this process forward and, you know, any feedback about what specifically you'd like to see out of these consultant projects.
David, you're
Maybe more of a
recommending,
comment, and not so much of a question. I'm concerned about wrapping Ryerson up in some sort of facilities thing. The Board of Ed, when they did their analysis, identified a bunch of systemic problems with that building and keeping it in operation as a school. Now, a town facility might be different from a school in its operating requirements, but I can't imagine they're that different. So I'm not in favor of continuing to delay what needs to happen to that building. I think if it were a viable building, Board of Ed would have identified it as a viable building. So that's my first comment. The
Can I
other one,
offer a response on that?
sure.
Yeah, it's out of our discussions with Peter Anderson and others. There's a significant need for storage. And some of the big open spaces there may be the right spot to do that, number one. So that we're looking at maybe you knock down a majority of the building, but maybe keep part of it for some sort of storage place. The other piece is that there's about 20 acres that the town owns that's landlocked behind Ryerson and Brown School. And the Ryerson property would provide the access to that those properties that could be opened up. So all those things are part of why we want to look at Ryerson. Again, the majority of those monies that we're talking about are going to be focused on Jeffrey. So Ryerson's really a quick look about how can we address those three issues.
There was just, and also I would say there's a lot, I mean, I think that there were some conversations about other, you know, relocation of the town garage, like all these different concepts that have come up for that property. So could part of that building be salvaged to use for offices for public works and then storage facilities? We haven't made that decision to move it up there, but I think the question is, have a look at the structure. Are there pieces that are you know, more salvageable than other parts of the building? Could there be a productive use for the town? And the report would just give us that feedback. You know, it really would, they would be pieces of a bigger puzzle in terms of, you know, moving different departments around. So, you know, it's kind of like are you suggesting we just don't even look at it, period, and just demos the way to go? I think it's better to say, hey, if we could save this one piece for storage or for the public works garage or whatever, that might be a productive part of the conversation as we move forward to decide what to do with the property.
Well, it represents a significant course change in the discussion of the property over the last 7-8 years. So maybe before we get into spending money, we bring up all these different possible uses and what the consequences of those decisions are.
But there was never, but Bruce, there was never a decision to sell the property. So it's more about, if the town decides to hold on to it, what are the different purposes, and can some of the building be used for town purposes? If the town decides obviously to sell the parcel, then, you know, demo is going to be part of that.
And that's not our discussion, is to sell the property. We don't think that, our committee doesn't believe selling the property makes sense. Possibly reusing it for other purposes makes sense. And the core question is, can the building, you know, is it cheaper to reuse some of the building rather than tear it all down or build something new on that site?
I mean, I think I've always felt over the years that should the student population rebound back to its more historical normal levels, certainly the levels that our housing stock can support, we're probably going to need that land for a school again at some point in the future. And so anything we do with that property should be with that in mind, because the day will come when we need to add a school and we're going to be looking around for property to do it.
We agree with that.
So I've
Good.
always advocated for a very low impact use of that land. I've said community gardens that would service North Madison, realizing that our community gardens at Bauer Park are completely subscribed and very popular. I've always thought that that would be a low impact use that would have a direct benefit for the residents farther north and not be one that taxed residents too heavily from a maintenance and ongoing operations perspective. So I don't know. I mean, maybe what I'm really saying is I'm a little uncomfortable with all of these plans and voting money to move forward on them because we haven't talked about them at all. Right. So
Well,
the
wait, yeah,
idea
no,
that
but
Board
no,
of Ed
Bruce,
would
the
go
whole
into
point, well,
Jeffrey.
Bruce, the whole point of this is the conversation has always been demolition, and that's because the Board of Ed said that it can never be used as a school. The building going forward is too cost prohibitive to renovate it. And so the building is not worth saving. That's a Board of Ed decision that was made.
Mhm.
All we're saying here is before we go ahead and spend $3 to $4 million tearing a building down, is there a possibility if the town decides it's going to keep the parcel and there's an alternate use for the town at that parcel, maybe we want to keep some of the building, maybe there's a piece of the building that could be a functional, space. That's all. And all this study would be doing is looking at that and saying, is there pieces here that make sense where the town could do that? We haven't made, none of these decisions have been made. We're still in this planning process, right? We're talking big picture here. Everybody's had idea generation right now. There's no, the plan is to do this with Ryerson. We need to understand if the building has some, has some potential to be repurposed. That's all. So, because otherwise we're just signing up for $3 million demolition. Just imagine if we do that, we demolish it. And then 2 years later, we think that's the best location for, I don't know, like I said, Public Works or, maybe it's some sort of other recreation facility up there.
Or for the buses or something like that.
Yeah, or the buses. Yeah, we talked about, because we've got the buses at not an ideal location, so I guess we just want to be a little more thoughtful before we rush to demolition. That's all. I mean, we can break these out as two separate pieces. Jeffrey is a must. And if we want to then craft something very specific, different for Ryerson, that was part of the RFP anyways, it was going to be kind of, here are the two buildings, here are kind of the goals for the two buildings.
Yeah, and also Peter Anderson's now scheduled us to be, and me and also with some of the other board members, some of the other committee members, to go through both Ryerson and Jeffrey on I think it's the 15th of July. So we're going to have a much better sense of what can and can't be done, but because we've not been able to get really good detailed access since the schools were open and in use. Now that they're all closed, we can get in there and really see what's going on.
Well, then, maybe for me, what I'd like to see first is the list of unmet needs. We've talked about all these potential uses for the building. What are the unmet needs that the town has that are looking for land or space? I mean, certainly the Ryerson doesn't have to exist for bus parking to go there, if that's the right place to put it. It is hard to believe that, I mean, if we're looking for storage, I guess I would need to understand better what kind of storage. And I don't see how that building becomes a public works building. I mean, I don't.
That's the whole point of doing this exercise, Bruce, is to answer all those questions. You see what I'm saying? This is the whole point of doing this process, is to go vet that. Is the space usable for some other functions? And then does that function, map up to, a need? That's part of this exercise. So, but I feel like, time is important. And so, I don't know, I'd like maybe some other board members weigh in, because we, like
Sure.
I
Yeah,
said.
yeah. What does everybody else think?
Listen, I'm listening to what you're saying, Bruce, and I agree with most of it in the sense of purpose and use and making sure that we're lining up to needs and all of that. But it sounds to me from what Peggy's saying that that's the point of this exercise, is to uncover and ensure that we've got captured all of the needs. I've always thought we were going to demolish Ryerson too, but I'm open to, looking at the right option for the town and the best option. I mean, things evolve. We evolve over time, and our needs evolve as a community. So I just think we need to be adaptable and flexible as we go through this process as well. I'm not going in with a closed mind. I guess I'm going in with an open mind.
Yeah, I like the open mind comment, Scott, because one thing that I've been hearing from the community is that, sometimes we take on projects without having like a real master plan. And I think this is, exactly what we wanted the facilities committee to do, is to look at our buildings and our vacant land, to see what is the best way to reuse them for needs that we have. So to Bruce's point, I think we do need to have that list generated of needs so that we're not, finding a project to fill a space, and what we're doing is finding a space to fulfill our need. So, just making sure we're doing this in an organized fashion, but
So, right.
yes. And so I do like the plan that David has here, because, especially with those vacant land parcels, there are some that just don't make sense, I'm sure, in the long run for us to keep. Whereas, Ryerson, as Bruce is saying, is if we do need another school in the future, um, that's probably where it would go. So just, as we're keeping that in mind, any potential use that is identified for it, what is that cost going to be to make it, and then potentially move it somewhere else if at the end of the day we do need a new school, 25 years down the road or something like that. But I'm open to exploring the process for these buildings and vacant land parcels.
I'd like to join the chorus. I think not only do I want to understand better the needs of the town, but I really think the public expects us to do some due diligence at this point in time and examine all of our needs. And as David's committee is doing, look at all of the potential resources of how these various properties might be put to use. So I would feel far more comfortable when it's time to go back to the public and propose specific projects, to be able to show the public that we have considered lots and lots of things. And I think, Jen, you used the term master planning. I think this is a moment for master planning. So I'm part of the chorus, and I think David's committee was quite proper in bringing forth all of these studies together, and not just doing this one at a time and somehow overlooking the synergy that might be created.
I think also when we, we're gonna have a final estimate for the demolition in, September, October timeframe for Ryerson. And then that will also be in the fall when we will have this assessment going on. So I feel like all the information will be feeding into us by the end of the year. So we can certainly take some things off the table. I think we all probably recognize the building probably is gonna come down, right? But let's take that extra step to ensure that we aren't shooting ourselves in the foot in some way for some other purpose that might, arise. And I think that what maybe, David, though, as we go through with the staff and craft the RFP, or when we hire the consultants, to make sure that this, Ryerson is a separate entity. It's got its own different issues with it, so we don't want to kind of lump them all as one big thing. To make sure that we're, focused on the fact that the demolition was kind of the likely outcome that the community is expecting, so.
And the only other thing I would say is the reason we bundled Ryerson and Jeffrey together is because the consultants would be the same for that. And there's some economy of scale of getting one consultant to look at two properties rather than getting two consultants to look at two independent properties, because we'd end up it would cost a lot more to do it that way too. So that's one of the reasons we're kind of bundling those two together. And I agree that the majority of our efforts are going to have to focus on Jeffrey. The Ryerson effort is going to be a much quicker in and out. What's the property like, and where are the potentials? And I think that's going to go very quickly versus Jeffrey. We're talking a whole, maybe 6 or 8 different uses potentially that could happen there. That makes sense on that hub in the town with all the schools right in that area.
And I think that we could share with the board the actual RFP draft, just to reach out and get feedback from board members, so you're comfortable with how it's worded and positioned as it goes out. I'm as sensitive as you are in terms of community expectations, and want to make sure that the guardrails are there in terms of how this is being looked at, right? So we could just share as we draft the final thing, send it out to board members. They could give feedback directly, like, this is, whatever the feedback is, so that you'd have input to ensure that it's not outside of the scope of what we've talked about today, I guess. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So can we talk about Memorial Town Hall? Because I know this was a little more, I don't want to say out of the blue. I think Memorial Town Hall has always been on the long list in the town in terms of capital needs. But I think that as we start looking at, assembly, meeting space, and the history of Memorial Town Hall, which I think is quite fascinating, and how it originated and it was built back in the late 1800s, trying to return that back to a purpose that the town needs is worthy looking at it. And I know this is not a CIP project right now, but the idea would be we get this and then we'd introduce it to the CIP process, in terms of what we could use for that space for and upgrade that space. There's a lot of considerations because we have functions there that have to continue, including probate court, youth and family services, and we have some outside organizations that use Memorial Town Hall. But I think it'd be worthy to see what it could be again if we brought back the kind of assembly meeting space. It was really the original meeting town hall, which prior to that was probably church space or whatever when people would come together. And David, you said you'd done some of this before, right? And for the town years ago, you looked at Memorial Town Hall?
Yeah, back when before the town campus was purchased, there was a study that was done by architectural firm Roth and Moore that I was part of, that was about renovating Memorial Town Hall into the town offices. And so as a result, I've reached out, and Roth and Moore is no longer in existence, since that was in the late 80s, early 90s, I think that happened. But there's the successor organization is a gentleman named David Thompson Architects, and he is one of the architects we'd probably want to ask for this, because he actually worked on that that design. But the original design, if you go back and look at some of the pictures, is it addresses that kind of theater, stage kind of need that was talking about for Academy, but in actually a much more elegant way. But like as Peggy mentioned, you're really talking about probate court, the historical society, the historical archives, and potentially, you know, the other functions in the Powder House and Madison Youth and Family Services, all kind of being woven into this kind of function, because those small buildings may actually tie into the long-term design. But if you then expand some of the functions to Jeffrey, you can open up spaces in potentially in the town campus and other areas of town to be moving those functions too. So it's all interconnected, as we were talking about before. This is really kind of part of the, you know, as I was telling Peggy, this is like a box of Legos. You know, every time you put them together, there's a different shape. But you know, what we're really trying to do is really put these together in a way that makes a lot of sense for the town. And this, given that we have a structure that's in actually very sound condition, there's some repairs that are probably required to it, but the core question is, can it be brought back to what it was originally designed at and satisfy what was probably, I think it probably was the number one goal of the community center, for that kind of theater kind of congregating space. You know, and you know, for context, if this is over 200, 250 seats, it's in that range, I think, that I want to confirm that. But, you know, the Kate out in Saybrook is only 210 seats. And you've all been there and you see how beautiful an old building can be brought back to. So if you start thinking about the potentials that could happen, I think it's pretty exciting, and it addresses some of those core questions about bringing more vigor and activity into the town center and town green. So for a relatively small number, Memorial Town Hall, I think, is going to be a cornerstone, if you will, to a lot of the other planning efforts that may take place.
I just think from a priority standpoint, Dave, as we think about this, though, and I'd be interested to see what the other selectmen think. I would put that as sort of the third priority versus, you know, Ryerson and Jeffrey, and then maybe the open slots. Just given the needs of the town and what we've heard so far, it just feels like that's sort of the priorities that we need to focus on, not minimizing by any means the Memorial Town Hall need or interest, but it just feels like sort of a third tier to me, just optically.
Well, and I think that the benefit, if we do the study, then it allows us to create a kind of long-term project, right? So it's not going to go ahead of anything in CIP, but it's now there, and we can talk about what need is going to be met, and then it would help address some of the other discussion points for some of the other buildings.
Yeah. And it gets that order of magnitude from whether it's feasible to even do, and take it off the table if it's not feasible to do, and then we move forward. Or if it is feasible to do, what kind of order of magnitude on the cost it may take. So then that takes a position, and then we decide where it fits in the scheme of things. But you know, this one is probably the lowest cost of effort to give some really pretty significant benefits that kind of opens up a lot of other sequential options. And this is also not part of the conversation for, from what I've heard, anything for the surf club or even in the follow-up academy conversation. So this is really addressing a need that nobody else, that's been identified repeatedly in the town for many years now, but is not on the burner at any of the other major efforts that are going on.
What again is the need that's been identified?
Well, that whole identification of a theater major congregating space for the town. That was part of the academy and
the Polson Auditorium.
That's certainly one of the options. And then you look at what's the alternative. But you know, that was the core question of my understanding, at least of the community center, was that you would bring that kind of a function on the green, which would be beneficial to the town.
Yeah, I think it was more a downtown location, town controlled. Certainly, Polson's renovation is needed, just the schools need it. It's going to double up for town use, clearly. And we'll be using that for meetings, but this was kind of address the kind of I think, economic vibrancy, activity, and also just having something in the heart of the community. There's a lot of history with Morrill Town Hall, so I think as we get into this, we'll learn about that and figure out how it fits within the grander thinking process for what I think is really a historic corridor. And that was one of the drivers with Academy, is you have this, you know, corridor of historic buildings in our town center. How do we make that more useful and unified and have a planning vision for that whole strip? And so as we make decisions with Academy, whether it's demolition or some other use, we want to think it in the context, and then we have to have Morrill Town Hall is really the anchor for that. So, and it's kind of cool, Bruce, I don't know if you've seen the pictures, when you go to Morrill Town Hall up in that congregating space, that second floor, that's actually cutting in half what was a huge auditorium. They put in like a fake floor or whatever you call it, right? I think it was in the 1930s. And
1935, yeah.
yeah. So it's kind of, you know, imagine you can see kind of the windows. It was like cutting all that in half, and then they created a fake
When you
second
walk,
floor.
when you walk by the building on the outside, you can see the steel structure they built on the interior, bisecting the windows. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm thinking that the actual renovation may not be so complex, because
Yeah, because you're just removing that.
You're just removing that steel structure. That's a kind of an independent. They built a building within a building, it looks like to me, but that needs to be confirmed. Just to Peggy's point, this also gives more arts target. That was part of the whole Academy thing. Plus, it also opens up for commercial, neither of which the Ryerson or the Polson Auditorium can do for the town.
So, so we'll, if everybody's comfortable with that, and then I think I just want to make a comment on the vacant parcels. I know there's people concerned that we're selling off all the town land. We're not, you know, this is a inventory analysis and repurposing analysis. It doesn't mean we're deciding to sell anything, but it's good to understand there are some things that we have to step back and say, why are we owning this? What is the long-term plan for this? So it's a good exercise to go through, and maybe one parcel out of all of them, maybe identified as a sale candidate. Others might have other uses, or at least now we know what we own as a town. So I don't think the intention here is to sell off a bunch of public land. I think the goal here is to just be smart about the public land that we have and how we're going to use it. But there may be some candidates that come out of this that we decide to sell. Selling public land also has to go through a public process, so the public will be able to weigh in on the decision to sell any kind of town land. So I just want to assure people that. So any other questions for David?
Thanks for your help, David.
I'm sorry.
Thanks for your help.
Oh, you're welcome.
And the teams.
Yeah. Well, and I will say that David's been dragged into the Surf Club Master Plan and the Academy discussion. So we're trying to make sure that we have people bird's eye view of everything going on. That's the whole point of this, right? So we appreciate he has expertise in this area and has been providing a lot of good advice for us. So I think it's great to have him willing to spend his retirement time doing this. So thank you for that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So I guess the next item is then the funding, and this is earmarking it, you know, so that at least we can go out and start getting actual proposals back. Item number 6, discuss and take possible action to approve releasing funds from the planning reserve in an amount not to exceed $150,000 for the ad hoc facilities committee to fund proposed RFPs for feasibility and planning studies of town assets pending Board of Finance approval.
Moved.
Second.
So this is basically the sum of the, you know, estimates that he came up with. And I think it might shift around a little here and there depending on how this all comes back from the bidding process. But we thought it was important to have a placeholder number, you know, so that we could move forward. We're fine. I did review the planning reserve with Stacy, and this is fine in terms of funding, because I know we just spent some more money in the Surf Club plan, but we still are adequately funded there to cover this. And then the board would be voting on the award of any specific contract, you know, so once we go through the process, you'll get to see the RFPs, you can weigh in on those, and then the board would be awarding a contract. So, any further questions or concerns about this? Bruce, are you okay at least, kind of earmarking the funding?
Yeah, so I am uncomfortable with it. I'm not going to be voting in support of this. I think there hasn't been enough discussion amongst us, amongst the Board of Finance and the town departments about what needs we're trying to look at. I'm not sure that there is a need to build out a theater in downtown. I do think we need to be thinking about how that space might be better utilized. It feels to me like the natural candidate for that space, or part of that space, would be youth and family services, and a project to build out something that works well for them in there. So I guess what I'm saying is, before I'm comfortable spending money or allocating money, I'd like to see us have more robust conversations about where we're actually trying to go with these facilities.
Well, I just want to highlight again, the point of this exercise is to identify what the opportunities are. So until we have like professional feedback and looking structurally at the building, what are the different options for the building? I feel like we can't make those decisions. Like, I want the reports to come back and say, okay, Memorial Town, you could turn it into a theater, you could make more offices, you can, you know, and then we can say, and this still, like I said, the theater piece, where it's not really theater, I would say it's a meeting hall, because that's what it was originally called, Memorial Town Hall, is the first step in a long process that would have to go through CIP before it would ever become any kind of project, right? So we haven't even gotten to that. This is to get the information so we can create the project. So that's my comments on that.
Right, and I appreciate that others
Yeah.
may be in a different place than I am. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's where I'm at the moment.
Okay, any other board member questions? No? All right, all in favor of approving the funding, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, nays? Nay? Okay, thanks. All right, great, motion passes, so we'll get moved up, that'll go to the Board of Finance. Item number 7, discuss and take action to award a contract to Kent and Frost in an amount not to exceed $50,000 for the first phase of the Surf Club Master Plan project, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all contracts and documents associated with this award budgeted in the CIP and Planning Reserve Fund.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. This is after we went through an RFP process. I think you have the proposal. I padded the proposal a little bit, just to give us a little wiggle room. I think they came back at 40,000, just to give us a little bit wiggle room. There will be other phases in this. Some of the other bidders came back much higher, but they were kind of offering a full like suite of services, like from soup to nuts for the planning process. This group, we would move forward with them in phases. So we come back to the board, once we hired them for like phase 2 and what work would be continued, for the surf club. Bruce, if you want to comment, you were part of that panel.
The first thing I'd like to say is huge thanks to staff for making this all happen so quickly. I think we met in very, very late June to try to get this all pulled together, and we managed to pull it off and get the companies in 4th of July week to make their proposals. I was really impressed with Kent and Frost in their in-person proposal. It just so happens they were on the lower end of the cost spectrum. They're a smaller firm, but they look like they're ready to lean into it fully, and are already thinking about the property the same way we do. I think, and that's maybe the biggest takeaway, is they think about this as a defining piece of property in Madison. And I think that's in line with the way we're already thinking about it as a community.
Great. Yeah, they were very impressive, and I think we're excited. They've done a lot of work in Mystic, and particularly in Stonington. They have a lot of coastal experience. I'm really excited for this process because this is a long time coming. It's been out there, and I'm glad we're finally getting to this. So, any further questions?
Yeah, Peggy, is Eddie guiding committee required for this step of the project, or is this really the consultants are going to be doing all of their own information gathering under the guidance of you and the staff?
That's so that's how we ran the strategic plan. So we had we had like a working group of staff that would be there. We do like bi-weekly meetings with the consultant to make sure they're getting what they need. And then if we had to reach out to different boards and commissions, and then the consultant will update Beach and Rec Commission and ultimately give us an update as well. That works well because it keeps things moving along quickly, you know? So we'll have like a core group. And if Bruce wanted to participate in that, you know, we could have, because he's the liaison for Beach and Rec. But it's usually more staff oriented, making sure they're getting information, questions are answered. I know when we did the survey, you know, but then we got some feedback for what was going to be on the survey outside of that working group. And so we can run that by the commission. So that's probably how we'll work this. And we want to get this, you know, they think they can do this within 6 months, but if we want to take our time and do things a little bit differently, you know, we can drag it out to 9 to 12 months, depending on what kind of level of analysis and public engagement. That will just set the stage for phase 2, right? Then there'll be some more decisions about the building and what does it look like, and a change in function. So there'll be another phase after this. But I think that's how we would run this. Okay. All right. With that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. All right. Item number 8. Discuss and take action to accept a recommendation from Public Works to amend a contract with SLR for an additional $144,000 for further design plans for the Boston Post Road Crosswalk Sidewalk Project, and to authorize the first selectman to sign all contracts and documents associated with this project, budgeted in fiscal year 2025, 2026 CIP and planning reserve.
So
Move.
moved.
Second.
Okay, great. So I think I'll let Rob talk to this. I think you had a memo on this, right? In your packet.
We have the SLR document.
Yeah,
Hi,
go ahead,
so-
Rob, just explain, because I know this has kind of been evolving.
Yeah, hi, good morning. So basically I gave to sent to Jeannie for the packet just the proposal from SLR. Given our planning discussion of the additional 24K in planning reserve funding that was at the last meeting. I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
what
this is
I-
just basically hiring the consultant for the work we agreed on.
Right. So
Yeah.
I've given a pretty comprehensive overview with the 2 graphics showing what this additional funding will be used for. Again, this was recommendations. We got some comments back from our lots of application, recommendations from the DOT that they'd be open to. They were encouraging the town to do these sidewalks, and they would be included in the our lots of application, meaning, you know, all the construction costs would be 100% funded by the state of Connecticut. So the town would just need to come up with the design and consulting costs there. It just seems, based on our current infrastructure and the way this project has already been evolving, it seemed like a no-brainer to me, but I just wanted to make sure, you know, I brought this opportunity to the board. And given the planning reserve funding going through last week, we have the 144K to keep this moving. Actually, while I was away last week, the revised lots of application, they had put together some areas just to keep this process moving. SLR had already started work under their prior contract just to get the some aerials in the application updated. So I'm actually hoping to have hopefully Peggy can sign that today or tomorrow, and we could get that back up to the state so we could get our commitment to fund letter. But again, in short, this is I think this is a really much needed pedestrian improvement project in areas that make sense. So I'm looking forward to, getting SLR continuing with this contract amendment.
Okay, any other questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye, okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 9, discuss and take action to approve a request for the purchase of a John Deere compact utility tractor and all related equipment in an amount not to exceed $55,573 is approved in the 2025-2026 capital improvement program, highway equipment reserve, and to award a contract to the town of Madison, United Ag and Turf to authorize the first selectman to sign all necessary contracts and documents associated with this award. The contract is through the Sourcewell Purchasing Consortium.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, this is just part of our capital plan, so I don't know, this was on the list for our equipment. Any further questions on that? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. All right, item number 10, discuss and take action to enter into a 5-year capital lease agreement with First American Bank for the purchase of the approved 2026 CIP highway equipment replacement schedule and authorizing the first select one send all contracts and documents associated with this lease pending Board of Finance approval.
So moved.
And
Okay, same thing. This is CIP, part of our equipment replacement. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. And I think normally these would go through our consent, but we don't, for a special meeting, we thought we shouldn't do a consent. Item number 11, discuss and take action to enter into a 4-year capital lease agreement with First American Bank for the purchase of the approved 2026 CIP police vehicle replacement schedule and authorizing the first selectman to sign all contracts and documents associated with this lease pending Board of Finance approval.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, any questions? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Item number 12, discuss and take action to accept a recurring annual grant in amount in the amount up to $17,500 from Workforce Alliance to provide funding for a Madison Youth and Family Services Summer Youth Employment Program pending Board of Finance approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and this is actually, we do this every year. This funds this program, which is great, for helping people get summer experience. Any further questions on that?
Scott Cochran is on and he may want to just say something. He pinged me. Can we promote him?
Okay, Scott. All right, just keep it quick because we got to go into executive session. So we're always grateful for these grants.
Morning. I just quick shout out to the businesses that are partnering with Madison Youth and Family Services to run this program. I thought it was important to acknowledge those. So the businesses that are involved this year include What's Cooking, Walker Loden, the MJ Grill and Seafood. That's the restaurant down at Surf Club. Madison Public Schools have a spot for us this year. Lenny and Joe's, Madison Lyric Stage, and the Chamber of Commerce. So I just want to say thanks to all those folks that are partnering with us to provide a work site for a youth and as a part of this program.
Awesome.
And thanks
That's
everybody.
Great. It's always a success, I know. So thank you for that. And we appreciate all the local businesses supporting it.
Yeah. Thanks everybody. Have a good day.
Yep. Okay. All in favor of accepting the grant, say aye. Aye. Now they can get paid. So that's kind of important, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, all right. Moving on, item number 13, citizens' comments. Do we have any hands raised for citizens' comments?
You do not.
Okay, going once, going twice. All right, with that, we will move on, and I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session and to invite Jeannie Stevens, Stacy Nobitz, Deb Ferrante, and I think Yolanda is joining us for this. I can't remember if she was scheduled to, from our pension advisor. With that, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, we're going to move into executive session for the public's benefit. And when we come out of executive session, we're just adjourning the meeting. So the screen will go dark, but no activity is going to be happening after executive session. With that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, and Chief Drum, we're inviting in as well. I'm inviting in. I'm adding that to the motion. So
Stacy, there are two, you're in there twice. Do you Which one's you?
We're still recording, just so you know. If you could please, recording's on, so we are now out of executive session. And with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Thanks, guys.
Aye.
Appreciate tough 8 a.m. after a long, busy weekend for everybody.
Whose idea was that, by the way?
I know. I think that's your schedule, Scott, that
Oh,
dictated.
no, it was
this.
not.